Wonderful. There we are. We are live here. Moneyline MMA coverage. UFC 319. The card I've been waiting months and months for as my favorite fighter is finally getting his title shot. Khamzat getting his middleweight title shot against Dricus du Plessis. Two alpha male dogs in the cage. No other way to say it. Both guys' styles kind of like to press forward and challenge their opponents outright. Um, it's going to be exciting. But before we get into UFC 319, let's quickly recap. Jose and I are absolutely on fire. It's me specifically. I'm 9-1 in the last 2 weeks with my five weights. Excuse me, accumulated 9 wins, one loss. That one loss being, oh man, C-Rod split decision loss. Oh, that was so close. C-Rod almost getting the job done for us last week. Andre Feely, it was a good fight. I could see it going either way, so I'm not mad. It's just a tough loss there. Thought C-Rod would get a little bit more work done. But otherwise, Lucindo doing exactly what I expected against Angela Hill. Steve Erceg, same against Ode Osborne. Fluffy Hernandez, Jose and I both picking him. Jose was more confident than I was, though. Easy finish, really. I mean, I guess I shouldn't say easy because it was in the fourth round, but it didn't feel like, watching the fight, it really didn't feel like Dolidze was doing a whole lot of anything in that entire fight. So, that said, Jose's five weight CLD doing well, also getting the finish against Eric Anders. That was a tough fight. Jose let me. I didn't see it, but Jose was saying he got eye poked and nut shotted in the first opening round there. That's a little unfortunate for anyone, but I guess it's the life of a UFC fighter because if you give up, you look even more like a coward. So tough night there for your boy Eric Anders, but not a tough night for Jose and I's picks. Safe to say you're winning money if you're following with us and riding with us. So continue to ride the hot streak with us going into UFC 319. This is, of course, a pay-per-view event, as I've already mentioned, between Khamzat and Dricus du Plessis. This is taking place in Chicago, out in Jose's area. Jose's hoping to get some ticket decrease so he can go because the prices are absolutely ridiculous. But yeah, that said, the United Center getting a cool event here, and there's some other good fights on this card. Like honestly, it's kind of peppered with really good fights throughout. Like Brian Battle, I'm excited to see fight Nursultan Rozabayev in the prelims. Edson Barbosa, Chase Hooper. There's a couple really interesting prospects and fights. I mean, even Jessica Andrade. I don't know. I'm excited for some of these prelims. But I think most of Jose's and I picks, as always, will come in the main card. But just as a reminder for anyone who's new here, we make our picks in a five-weight system. We pick five of the currently 13 scheduled fights for 319 and weigh them in order of confidence, with five weight being the most confident and one weight, of course, being the least confident. So five weight is essentially our lock of the week, and we make these picks separately of each other and just confer right before the show so we know what order to go in, because we always start with our locks of the week first. So without further ado, for this United Center pay-per-view, of course, starting with the prelims at 5 p.m. Central Time and a main card at 9 p.m. Central Time. Without further ado, my five weight lock of the week. I'm going there. Of course, I'm not going to talk the talk and not walk the walk. I'm going to be taking who's currently listed as a minus 225 favorite. I can't believe this. It's so interesting hearing the discourse on this fight back and forth, all week long, kind of following the media's idea, following the crowd's idea, and even some betting ideas, kind of getting the mix from the public in general. And here we are sitting minus 225 on Monday afternoon. Khamzat the favorite against Dricus du Plessis, and I'm going straight in with my five weight on my favorite fighter. Like I said, I'm going to walk the walk here with Khamzat. I think he's going to get the finish against Dricus du Plessis. It really is one of those scenarios where all you're pretty much hearing is either Dricus makes it out of the second round and wins, or Khamzat gets the finish within the first two rounds. I'm not at all following that discourse. I think Khamzat can last the full 25 minutes if he needs to. I think Khamzat is enough of a dog to almost break through some of the fatigue that you'll see affect other guys. I'm not saying he's perfect. Of course, both of these guys will be affected by fatigue. But I'm saying you're still going to see both of these guys with some level of aggression in the fifth round if it gets that far. And it's just as simple as that. I think both these guys know what's at stake. And there's no element of like, oh, well, Kamzat's in the third round. He's too tired to get anything done. He's too tired to land a takedown. Like, what? Are you kidding me? When was that ever the case? Just because he beat Robert Whitaker in the first round doesn't mean he can't get to the third round. Just because he had a close fight with Kamaru Usman, a former champ, it doesn't mean he can't get to the, like, what do you mean? He had a pretty solid third round against Usman. I mean, I understand that was the round everybody was like, oh, Usman won that round. If he went 5 rounds, Chimaev would have lost. And it's like, I don't know. Let's see. Clearly, we're about to see, because I'm not so certain that Kamzat's going to get the first or second round finish against Dricus here. There's no doubt he's going to be putting his foot on the gas, and to me, there's also no doubt he's going to get the wins on the scorecards. So there is some element of, like, one of the questioning factors is, okay, sure, can Chimaev get the job done enough to win the rounds in the fourth and fifth rounds if he has to, for a decision? And that's something he has. That's the one and only thing. He had that third round against Kamaru, okay, but he lost it. He did lose that round. It was a majority decision. I would agree, even as one of his bigger fans. He lost that round. So all right, but that said, Chimaev's a guy. He's going to be improving. He's not just going to be the same guy you've seen previous. I think that's dang near been made clear now. As he's really only been fighting, like, he only fought once in 2024, only fought once in 2023, and he fought multiple times in the same week in 2022, so, or the same month pretty much. So yeah, man. That said, Khamzat Chimaev is going to get the job done. I'm not sitting here tooting his horn about first round or second round finish. I think he can win this by decision. I really do. I just don't think Dricus is enough of a technical savant. I think they're both almost just going to get to this point where they're too stubborn to change their ways, and it's going to be either Khamzat gets the submission win or Dricus gets some sort of knockout in a scrambling scenario. What do you think, Jose?
Yeah, so for this one, Nick, I do have similar thinking to you on this, but I'm gonna go with Dricus du Plessis, and he is my one weight, so he's obviously my lowest confident out of all the fights we're going to talk about. And reason being is, yeah, Khamzat Chimaev is a scary dude. You already know what to expect from him. Like, he's gonna immediately, as soon as the bell rings, within the first 30 seconds, he's gonna shoot for a takedown. And Dracus du Plessis is at a point where he should expect that and be ready for it. And he's just a really good scrambler. But the thing is, he's gonna be put on the ground for sure by Khamzat, if not within the 30 seconds, at some point within the fight for sure, without a doubt. I'm expecting Dracus du Plessis to do what he always does, though, and have constant movement and not make it easy for Khamzat. He's not going to just sit on his back. I expect him to do a lot of scrambling. Even if it's not technical, it's just going to be sloppy. It's still going to be hard for Khamzat to control him. And Dracus du Plessis, he's the type of guy who's willing to take a hit to land one. So as long as Khamzat doesn't knock him out, because I do think Khamzat can also knock out Dracus du Plessis, if he doesn't knock him out, I think du Plessis will be able to land and hurt Khamzat and even probably be close to putting Khamzat out. Khamzat, I do kind of agree with the aspect that if Khamzat, like, du Plessis, DDP's chances of winning, his chances of winning do go up as the fight goes on, because we have seen Khamzat in all his fights. As the fight goes on, he does get somewhat sloppier. For example, the Gilbert Burns and Kamaru Usman fights, those two, he started getting sloppy and he started getting tagged, and then you saw what happens when he can't take someone down, like Kamaru Usman was finding success and in the fourth and the fifth round more with the striking. So if du Plessis could drag the fight out and have Khamzat gas himself out a little bit, I do think Khamzat can go to the end of the 5 rounds, but I just don't think he's going to be as technical. I think that's where du Plessis will be able to land and pick his shots more, because I do think Dricus du Plessis, I think he may have a slightly better gas tank than Khamzat, though. But at the end of the day, I do think, like, it's just going to be a sloppy fight on both ends. I think this fight is probably going to look similar to the Gilbert Burns and Khamzat fight, where both are just going to be throwing haymakers at each other, eat shots. And honestly, this fight may actually be way more on the feet than we think. That's what I think. I think it's just going to be du Plessis will be taken down but get up out of it. And he himself, he's got a submissions threat as well. Like, he he's got that face crank he did to Izzy. You know, if he takes Kamzat's back, that'd be interesting to see. Because to be honest, like Duplessis, even though Kamzat is slightly taller than him, he's 6'2", and Duplessis is 6'1". Duplessis is going to be one of the bigger guys Kamzat has gone against. Because Kamzat, he's been fighting mostly dudes that have fought majority of their careers at welterweight. Like, and even though he was going down to welterweight himself, he was also missing weight and struggling to make that weight. But you know, like Gilbert Burns, Kevin Holland, Kamaru Usman, not really staple middleweights. Even though Kevin Holland has had success at middleweight, but we all know he's definitely a true welterweight. He's had more success against dudes where that are true welterweights, but Duplessis is a true middleweight. So to me, this is definitely going to be Kamzat's biggest test. And again, because I have DDP as my one weight, that just is a lot. Like that just means like, you know, I do think Kamzat has a high probability of winning this as well, just because he can just shoot in and make it an early night, because that's, you know, kind of been the theme of it. But I think Duplessis is going to give him a harder time. Keep like not keeping him staying on the ground and staying put against Kamzat. And I think he's going to land some powerful shots, especially in the fourth and fifth rounds against Kamzat. So that being said, I have DDP. And honestly, I have no method of him winning this. I can even be a split decision, to be honest, is what I'm thinking. So that being said, I have DDP, but he is my one way. I have very low confidence in him.
Fair enough, man. So yeah, in that case, we will disagree. But honestly, it's not like an adamant, super disagreement. You know, with your five weight, my five weight, or anything. It's your one weight. You see the threat that Kamzat brings. I just think, for me, I'm a little bit more confident in that threat. You acknowledge it, and that's why DDP is lower on your weights. The way I see it, but at the same point, from my perspective, I'm saying Kamzat. You know, I realize it, and I think he executes it. I think Kamzat, you know, you're right. Kamzat could land the finish on the feet too. It's not only a submission game, and yeah, it's sure one of those things that you know, I guess DDP is Kamzat's biggest test, but it's like, I don't know by what margin. I mean, he's already beat Whitaker. He's already beat Usman. You know, I mean, those two are really two of the best. Like, people would want to say Usman was a welterweight goat, this and that. Like, okay, I don't know if that's true, but in the end, I don't think Dricus Duplessis is like some sort of another world opponent where it's like Kamzat's coming over from another class, or he's finally fighting his first top five opponent or anything like that. Honestly, the last point I'm making that is I think Chimaev doesn't care. I think if whether or not Chimaev is fighting a guy that's ranked 100 or a guy that's the champ, I think he does his method of fighting, which is go in there, take someone's back, and finish them. And I think he does the same against Dricus. And honestly, I don't see Dricus being able to hold that off for more than 15-20 minutes.
Yeah, so that being said, yeah, this is one we disagree on, but you feel really strong about Kamzat. I have low confidence DDP, but I'm still rolling with him. Definitely excited about this one. Definitely the fight I'm looking forward to the most come Saturday night. Um, but that being said, I think I'll move over to my five weight then. And this fight is also on the main card, and this is actually now the co-main event between Leron Murphy and Aaron Pico. Right now, Leron Murphy, he is the betting underdog at plus 138, while Aaron Pico is a betting favorite at minus 178. This one, yeah, I'm going five weight Leron Murphy. Like I'm going all in on it. Pico. I've actually seen Aaron Pico since he made his debut in Bellator back in 2019, and he's just got these amazing wrestling credentials. Similar to like how Bo Nickel coming in, but the thing is like he's in that time he's developed. He's really built and developed within Bellator, and now he's coming over and has the potential to be a superstar in the UFC. And the dude, for a wrestler, you know, like kind of like Gaethje, like he doesn't use it a lot as much as he could, because he's just got powerful hands. He's got knockout potential, and like his last fight in the PFL against Henry Corrales, he got a first round KO, and that was, you know, he's shown a lot of growth because Henry Corrales, he's the first loss that Aaron Pico's had on his record. Well, his second loss, I should say. He got knocked out in the first round by Henry Corrales, and then a lot of time has gone by since then. Aaron Pico's got a lot. He developed so much within Bellator and the PFL that he was able to avenge that loss and get his and return the finish in the first round. So that just shows a lot of growth and corrections that he's been making. So definitely, like I can see why he is a favorite, but Leron Murphy at the same time, um, I think Aaron Pico's not going to offer anything that Leron Murphy hasn't seen yet. Leron Murphy is only 34 years old. He's in the middle of his prime right now. He's 16-0, undefeated, and he's gone against heavy hitters similar to Aaron Pico, like most recently Josh Emmett, and Dan Ige, and then Edson Barboza. Like these guys are good strikers, and they have the potential to make it an early night. And Leron Murphy was able to drag the fight out. I think this fight he's going to win, and it's going to be in similar fashion. It's going to be almost a unanimous decision win. I think he's just going to avoid the power of Aaron Pico. The only thing is like, will he avoid Aaron Pico's wrestling? Because Aaron Pico could take Leron Murphy down and just ragdoll him the whole fight and not give Leron Murphy anything to work with. But I think Leron Murphy, his takedown, he's got a 52% takedown defense, but his wrestling as well is not that bad. Like he may even be able to get his own takedown against Aaron Pico in this one. But I think his wrestling defense overall is going to be good. Is going to be good enough to stay on the feet for majority of the time, and he's going to force Aaron Pico into a striking match. And if that's the case, I just don't think Aaron Pico will have the easiest time knocking Leron Murphy out. He's just got high striking IQ. He lands 4.53 significant strikes per minute and only absorbs 2.48. So Aaron Pico, I think, is going to have a hard time finding Leron Murphy's chin to make it an early night, and that's the way I see this fight mostly going. And out of the 16 wins Leron Murphy has, he has 7 KO, 7 TKO, and 9 decision wins. Again, I think even though Aaron Pico has, out of his 4 losses, he has been knocked out 3 times, so he doesn't, he hasn't been knocked out in a minute, to be honest. But it just shows like a chin, like he has a chin. Aaron Pico does have a chin, but anything can happen. It's the UFC. This is like the level of competition that Leron Murphy's gone against Aaron Pico as well is not the same. Like Aaron Pico doesn't have the biggest names on his record quite yet. So I think this may be, something where he's just getting pushed a little too soon as well. Like Leron Murphy's ranked number 6 right now in the UFC, and this is a big test for Aaron Pico coming in. And they're just throwing him throwing him to the wolves like how they threw Patricio Pitbull to Yair Rodriguez and so forth. So like that being said, I'm going with Leron Murphy. I feel really confident in him just because I just like his experience that he has. He is older. He's a phenomenal striker. The weakest aspect here is just going to be his wrestling. Is going to be his wrestling defense compared to Aaron Pico. But I think his wrestling defense will be good enough where he can keep majority of the fight on the feet, and that's where I think he's going to do the most damage against Aaron Pico. And again, as long as he avoids the power hand from Aaron Pico, which Leron Murphy has shown he can do, like again against like Emmett Smith. That being said, like, yeah, I think I mean Josh Emmett, my bad, against Josh Emmett. Then yeah, that means like I think Aaron Pico's not going to offer anything to Leron Murphy that he hasn't seen yet. So that being said, I got Leron Murphy. He is my 5-weight. Nick, what are your thoughts on this fight?
Man, I mean, you covered it, dude. Honestly, for the lack of repeating what you said, basically, I agree. And there's really, I really don't have much more to add. I think you said it all. So I'm taking Leron Murphy. What is my official weight? 4-weight. So pretty confident in Leron Murphy. And yeah, that's pretty much that.
So then that being said, that's your 4-weight. Do you want to go down to your 3-weight or should I do my 4-weight?
Let me do my 3-weight because I feel like we heard enough of you for a second. Let me get some words in. I'd like to get some words in next, and we'll hear what you got to say as well on this pick. But for now, I'm going to keep us. Actually, all my picks find us on the main event here. There was just too much entertainment here on the main event for me to move away to the prelims, or at least, as far as confidence goes, too, of course. But in the end, still pretty confident in most of these main event picks. And that said, I'm going to be taking another underdog here. We're going to go with Tim Elliott, a plus 250 dog against Kaya Sakura. This is my three weight. Kaya Sakura is a guy that I like, and I see what's, I see the outlook for this guy. I think he's got a lot of room for improvement. He's still in his low 30s. So he's got a chance to turn it around and make another run for it in UFC. But it's also one of those things where I'm a little confused as to what he's done exactly to become a minus 340 favorite against a guy like Tim Elliott. I think Tim Elliott, I understand, right? He's 20-13. You look and he's like, okay, he might not be beating like all these like flashy guys, but the fact of the matter is that his experience is above all else like 10, 11, 12 fold more than Kaya Sakura. It's not even close. Kaya Sakura is only one fighter in his entire list of his entire professional career is Pantoja, and he lost after getting taken down and choked out in the second round. And let's be honest, Tim Elliott has a wrestling game that he can lean on. Tim Elliott might have gotten submitted a few times, but he's also gotten more submissions than he's been submitted. Tim Elliott lands almost 4 takedowns per 15 minutes in his fights. And if he's able to do anything close to what Pantoja was, which is 3 takedowns of 7 takedown attempts and a finish in the second round, I think Tim Elliott can do the exact same thing here. I just don't see anything to tell me that Tim Elliott's going to be willing to stand there with Kai and get knocked out, essentially. That's all Kai really has behind him is a KO potential, punch. And I just think Tim Elliott's way too smart. He's not going to stand there and box with dude. He's going to take him down and make it at the very least a split decision loss. It's not going to be some sort of finish where he's twitching on the mat. So trust me on this one. Tim Elliott is not going to let this be easy for the newcomer Kaya Sakura. You would think that this would be a moment where, maybe the UFC is trying to let Kaya Sakura bounce back from a loss. Absolutely not. This is a terrible stylistic matchup for him, and I think he takes the loss. What do you think, Jose?
Yeah, so this one I'm going to disagree, and it's also my three, but obviously got Kai Sakura on this one. And, and the thing is like, yeah, I don't think Tim Elliott's going to make it an easy night whatsoever for Kai Sakura, but it's definitely like a big level change going from fighting for the title against Pantoja, one of the best to do it in the division, then to Tim Elliott. And no disrespect to Tim Elliott, but he's been a little inactive for 2 years, and dude's got crazy experience, but we've seen him like like take some like losses and like to really good strikers like Brandon, like he's got submitted by Brandon Royval, Askar Askarov, and Davidson Figueiredo. So he's been more submitted actually, if anything, by good strikers. And Kaya Sakura, yeah, I mean he's not really much of a submission artist himself, to be honest. He's only got 3 submissions, but I think in this one, I think he's, as long as he can avoid the takedown, I think he'll have this in his pocket. He's and the thing is like that's if Tim Elliott comes in with a heavy wrestling advantage, wrestling game plan, that is. And all like these fights, it's gonna start in the feet. And I think Kai Sakura, after the last fight, he got to experience the best of the UFC has to offer in this division, and he got out grappled. He saw it, so if he wasn't working on improving that, especially maybe if he ever fights Pantoja again, because if you're Kaya Sakura, that should be your goal, like to avenge that loss and get the belt. So and then Tim Elliott, in my opinion, I think is just a stepping stone for him in that, and he's going to continue developing. He's got a 3-inch reach advantage over Tim Elliott in the striking. I think he's just going to clip Tim Elliott more. Whether he'll finish Tim Elliott or not, I don't know, but do I do think this actually is a good, in my opinion. I know you said like don't think it is, but I think this is just a better matchup for Kaya Sakura, because realistically, now that he's in the UFC, he's going to be going against a lot more heavy wrestlers than what he did over in Asia. But he's also from Japan, and Japan has some of the best wrestlers in the world right now too. So I'm expecting that he's definitely just, if anything, like he just has to be working on more of the wrestling more than anything, similar to like Francis Ngannou and Poetan, how they did when they came over. You know, heavy, good strikers, but with no wrestling. But as time goes on, they slowly, little by little, have been improving. And I just think Asakura is going to be on that same projectile. Like it's just going to be something similar where strong striker, but in the wrestling is just going to get better over time. So maybe he won't land his own takedown, but he'll do a little more takedown defense than what he did against Pantoja. And he should just overall, I think, win majority on the feet. So whether he'll finish Tim Elliott, I don't know, but I think he can definitely win this by points on the feet. So that being said, yeah, I got Kaya Sakura, and he's my 3-weight.
Interesting. So we do have a direct disagreement there. That'll be a direct disagreement for three weights there, and I see where you're coming from, right? I think it's just two ways of different. Obviously, it's two different ways of looking at it, but for me, I guess I just give a little bit more credence to Tim Elliott's wrestling ability to get Kaya Sakura on the ground slash on his back, and maybe you're right. I think it will be very fascinating to see how much of a difference Asakura comes in with a wrestling ability. Because if you're right, and he is absolutely hammering home his wrestling ability, I think he's got a real shot in this fight. But to me, I've got to see it before I believe it. And I'm going to stick in the boat where I can rely on Tim Elliott. I know what he's going to bring. He's not a champion, but he's also a good enough, absolute solid UFC veteran that's only been finished once by KO or TKO in his entire career. Of all the dogs he's faced, he might have lost to a lot of good fighters like Askarov and Royval and Figueiredo and even Demetrius Johnson. But guess what? Only one of them finished him. And that said, man, I think he's going to be able to take that into Kaya Sakura and at the very least make it close. So interesting to hear our differing perspectives, but we will disagree on this one both with our three weights.
Yeah, and then that being said, that brings us up to my 4-weight. This is the middleweight bout between Jared Cannonier and Michael Venom Page. Right now, Jared Cannonier, he is the betting underdog at plus 152, while Michael Venom Page is a minus 196 favorite. This is crazy. I never thought I'd see these two guys fight each other. Especially just the road that Jared Cannonier's had from being like a former heavyweight to now fighting a middleweight, and Michael Venom Page moving up from welterweight. And it's just like, when you look at it, like you can definitely tell Michael Venom Page is gonna be the faster striker in this, but Jared Cannonier is gonna be the hard. And it's gonna be a good striking match. And when it comes down to it, I just think Michael Venom Page is gonna take this fight. I don't think he's gonna. I would be surprised if he finishes Jared Cannonier in any fashion. I think this is going to be like some of the other fights I talked about already. Like it's just going to be Michael Venom Page winning via strikes and just points. And he may. I don't even know if he'll make Jared Cannonier bleed at all. But Jared Cannonier, I think, is just going to be a little too slow. Both guys are older. Jared Cannonier slightly older. But and Jared Cannonier is really good too, which is the thing. Like I want to go with him. He still shows that he can get it done. Even against some of the younger dudes, but in this one, like Michael Venom Page as well, like the striking that he offers is just so unique, that wide stance karate style. And for him being 38 years old, he came in, he showed that he can be another striker like share a bullet. And on the other hand, then you got Jared Cannonier, who, again, he's got crazy power in his hands, and then he goes and beats another power hitter like Gregory Robocop Rodriguez. So that's definitely the staple of this fight. Power hitter, a little bit slower versus the faster striker. And in this one, I'm just going with the faster striker because Michael Venom Page, he is hard to hit. But without a doubt, if Jared Cannonier catches Michael Venom Page, it's going to be lights out. But I think Michael Venom Page is going to be faster in and out. And we've seen, like, the only way Jared Cannonier can possibly win this is if he implements a heavy striking game and just holds MVP down, similar to like how Ian Gary did. That's honestly, that's pretty much the game plan to beat Michael Venom Page. But Jared Cannonier, the dude, and if I were him, I would have to come in with with a wrestling mindset, but he's not really that much of a he doesn't really go takedowns at all. So this fight, I do think is going to be mostly on the feet. And that being said, I'm going with Michael Venom Page, and both guys have long reaches, but Michael Venom Page, he has a 1.5 reach advantage over Jared Cannonier. And he barely gets clipped. He only absorbs 1.78 significant strikes per minute, while Jared Cannonier gets clipped quite a bit. He absorbs 4.49 significant strikes per minute. So this one I'm liking MVP to get the job done. I think he's going to win by decision. I have him as my 4-weight. Nick, what are your thoughts on this one?
Ooh, I think we will get an agreement here. I will be taking Michael Venom Page as well. I'm a little less confident, so he's my 1 weight. A little bit less confident there for me. I like Michael Venom Page, and it's kind of another situation where you really said it. All the same reasons. Like I don't think he knocks out Jared Cannonier, Killer Gorilla. I don't think he does. I don't think really. I guess that's kind of Cannonier's path to victory here, but in the end, I don't think anyone's really thinking, oh yeah, I'm gonna go knock out Michael Venom Page. I think both these guys really are. Uh, you know, they want to finish the fight, of course, but I think in all reality, the highest likelihood outcome is a decision for either of these guys winning. And should Jared Cannonier be a little bit more of a wrestling threat, I'd be with it, and I would take him against Michael Venom Page because that's exactly what Jose said, kind of what Ian Gary had ended up having to do, and it was really boring. Ian Gary was one of the most boring fights I've ever seen Michael Page be a part of, and he had to be boring to win that fight. So I just don't see Killer Gorilla Cannonier doing that. So with that said, I agree with Jose. It's going to be a Michael Page night, I think, but it's still going to be kind of one of those moments where you're just waiting for Cannonier to get a finish. He won't, and then they'll raise Page's hand for a decision at the end. So
Yeah, so this is another one we agree on. Not our lock of the week, but uh, uh, close second though. MVP with a total combined of 5 points. I feel more confident in him, um, with him being my 4-weight and then him being your 1-weight. So that being said, I think we just have one more fight left to talk about.
yeah, and we're just gonna ride the wave here. The main event. We're gonna stay on the main event. Sorry, main card. Really, when I say main event, I guess I'm just thinking the five fights that consist of the main card. But that said, we got one more of those five to cover by process of elimination. That leaves us the welterweight bout between Jeff Neal and Carlos Prates. Carlos Prates, of course, coming off a loss against Ian Gary, who's pretty much guaranteed the next title shot or close to it. Carlos Prates otherwise having like 4 or 5 straight finish wins, 4 straight performance bonus wins. Jeff Neal's Jeff Neal. I think we all know what Jeff Neal brings. He did finish Rafael Dos Anjos last year in October. So this is like 10 to 11 months since Jeff Neal's last fought, which just isn't like abnormal. He only fought once in 2023. He only fought once in 2022. So Jeff Neal isn't necessarily the most active of guys. It's not necessarily surprising to see him take just under a year off here, but I will say it's an interesting matchup wise. He goes from fighting Ian Gary to fighting RDA, and now he's fighting Carlos Prates off a loss. I gotta say this almost feels like Carlos Prates either is taking a step back or the UFC thinks Jeff Neal is better than he is. I don't know. Basically, what I'm saying is that I'm taking Carlos Prates here for my 2-weight. I like Jeff Neal a lot here, but I think Carlos Prates is like supposed to be a guy getting pushed. He's a guy that fits the storyline aspect, and that's something that I like to say. The UFC's not in here rigging fights. They're not out here like doing this or that to say such and such guy you got to go get finished so we can have this guy win for us. No, not necessarily. But what the UFC does do is make fights for storylines, right? And they make fights knowing whose people's strengths and weaknesses are for a specific storyline they may have in mind or that they might prefer. And in my opinion, they're ready to put Carlos Prates towards the top of this weight class. He's 6'1", he's 78-inch reach. He's a pretty big dude. Even Jeff Neal is maybe not the biggest dude in this division either, but he's got like a 3-inch reach advantage alone on Jeff Neal. I don't know. I'm excited to see what Carlos Prates can do for the future of this company. I think they love the fact that he goes in there and swings heavy early, although he just went to decision against Ian Gary. Something tells me, man. Something just tells me he's going to want to come out here and he's going to want to be aggressive early. Something tells me he's going to be like, I'm sick and tired. The one and only time I don't go out there and swing for the fences, I lose. I'm done. I'm going in there and I'm finishing this guy. And I'm sorry for Jeff Neal, but it's going to have to happen. Jeff Neal may not be finished very often. So I'm not saying he's going to be knocked out cold, all right? But this is going to be a spot where Jeff Neal gets knocked down maybe, and he gets some follow up shots and he somehow holds his own, but it's a clear round loss or something along those lines, and it leads to a decision loss. I don't know. It's hard to say that Jeff Neal for sure gets knocked out, but I would take KO or points all day, left and right on Carlos Prates, who is a favorite for this fight at minus 265. But I think you can take that with confidence. What do you think, Jose?
Yeah, for this one, I agree with you. I have Carlos Prates. Obviously, by process elimination, he is also my two weight. Yeah, you said it best. Like, I think Carlos Prates, like Jeff Neal, he's actually, you know what, with Jeff Neal, in all respect, tough dude. He has a good resume, and he, even the losses that he's had, he's put up really good fights as well. He's not easy to put out, and but Carlos Prates, just his size, like Ian Gary figured him out. Ian Gary was just was able to figure Carlos Prates out. Jeff Neal, I don't think is nearly as good as Ian Gary, and Jeff Neal gets clipped quite a bit. He actually gets clipped way more than he lands, and so does Carlos Prates. But Jeff Neal's already been in the UFC way longer than Prates. And Carlos Prates himself, he has a 3-inch reach advantage over Jeff Neal. So I think overall that's going to be huge in this fight. He's going to just, I think he's just going to be clipping Jeff Neal nonstop. And both guys barely go for the takedown as well. So I think this, as long as it's on the feet, it's Carlos Prates' fight for the taking. And Jeff Neal, not easy to put down, but I do think Carlos Prates can get the job done and make it an early night. So overall, I think, I think almost like the theme a lot for the lot of the guys, at least I picked, is going to be their wrestling defense and staying on the feet and outstriking their opponents is what I've noticed. So I think Carlos Prates has just got he's got the body, the length, and the tool sets overall, especially with his striking, to get that job done and either win unanimously or finish Jeff Neal, and mostly via strikes. So that being said, I agree. I agree with you on this one. I have Carlos Prates also being my 2 weight.
Man, and the last note I'm gonna make too is I was thinking, maybe I'd be able to catch you in one because I'd be able to catch you in one being like a little trap or something because Carlos Prates fought not Jeff Neal. He fought Neil Magny, and I think in my head as Neil Magny and Jeff Neal as pretty similar fighters. But the thing being that Neil Magny at the time, I believe I remember discussing this fight as a part we had in our show that time because it was a fight night, so they were on the main card. It was one of the things we discussed, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I don't know if you took Neil. Sorry, if you took Neil Magny in that fight, or if you just had said like you're gonna pick Prates for a low weight because Neil Magny almost never gets finished, right? And I specifically remember saying that I'm going to pinpoint that moment in my head because what that was proof of was that you can go ahead and not get knocked out as long as you want. You can go ahead and fight whoever you want and not get finished. But that does not mean that you have an insane chin. That does not mean that you won't get knocked out again and or at any point in the future. And that you can look. Neil Magny hadn't gotten knocked out by anyone since like 6 years ago, right? He had fought all these guys like Ian Gary and Gilbert Burns and Shavkat, and none of them knocked him out. So how would Carlos Prates knock him out? First round finish from Carlos Prates, performance bonus of the night. And I'm going to just say it again. He could do the same thing to Jeff Neal. We can sit here all we want and say, well, Stephen Thompson didn't knock him out. Shavkat didn't knock him out. Same thing, right? Well, guess what? He can still get finished. Because if we go back far enough, Kevin Holland finished him back in 2017. That wasn't even in the UFC, which is funny enough to say. But regardless, anyone in the UFC can get finished with a strong enough strike. Prates has that strike. And he will knock anyone out that is not ready for it. So, yeah, if anything, I'm talking myself into being more confident in Prates as we speak. But yeah, that said, confident is H. 2 weight there for me on Prates. Jose agrees. So with that said, our lock of the week appears to be Lerone Murphy with a combined 9 confidence points. My 5-weight Chimaev, Jose agrees could be a close fight, but ultimately disagrees on the pick. Jose's 5-weight is the lock of the week. And from there, you might as well write Page and Prates as other potential MVPs. Page technically has more confidence points combined, but I'd say Prates is just as equally confident as Page from us. So thanks as always for listening to our show for UFC 319. Jose and I we're guaranteeing you the streak will continue. So make sure to back who we just picked, because either or both of us are about to go above 500 this Saturday. And following up from this Saturday, the UFC does continue to provide more action. So Road to UFC Shanghai actually takes place, and then they're doing like back-to-back China things the weekend after UFC 319. So they have the Road to UFC on Friday, and then August 23rd, the Saturday, they have a actual card in Shanghai, China. So be ready to not be able to watch that unless you want to watch the fight starting at 2 a.m. Central Time. Yes, that is correct. 2 a.m. Central Time. So we'll still be reviewing the card and all of that. It is actually a pretty interesting card. Brian Ortega is on the co-main event, just saying. So make sure to tune in.